memory would be from primary school. And as you know, in 1968, Down won the All Ireland. So I was only 5 at that stage, and I was at the primary school, and there was a huge excitement about Down playing in the All Ireland. And of course, we had a club member, Tom O'Hare, who played cornerback on that particular team. And Tom was good enough to bring the cup to the school, so you can imagine the huge excitement that there was at that particular time. Very vague memories, of course, at that age, but I do remember this huge cup coming to the school at the time, and the excitement was unreal. So that would be my first real memories of GAA, and it probably inspired me to want to play Gaelic football from then on. And of course, we had a primary school team at the time, and a lady called Miss Delargy was our manager, one of the teachers in the school, and she was good enough to take us out and train us with the help of some of the local GAA men. Tom O'Hare and Sean O'Hare were obviously coaches at that time in the club, so they got involved in the school as well. So, and of course, my mum had always been there as well, so that was she'd have been there cutting oranges and keeping us right as well. So that would be my first real memories of the Gaelic football at that young age. Obviously, back then, Tom, who was the key man in the club in regards to coaching the underage teams, he put a lot of time in and taught us the basic skills and trained us at the time, and was involved in most of the underage teams at that particular time. Plus, his brother Sean was involved in the local youth club, and would have learned a lot of other skills through what are called community games, and just basketball and hurling and different skills from different sports at that time, which all added to developing me as a Gaelic footballer. So those were probably the early memories. And at that time, the competitive football didn't really start until maybe under 14 at club level. And then we were sort of an up-and-coming club at the time. Our club was in Division 4, and we hadn't a great amount of numbers. We're not a big parish, so there only is maybe 2,500 people in the club and in the parish altogether. So it took us a while to get going, but slowly but surely we got there. I can remember being on the receiving end of quite a number of drubbings from different clubs at that time. But by the time we got to 18, we actually won the minor championship, where Tom was actually manager himself, and Ian Brady, Tom O'Hare. And those were great memories for us, because having played the same teams at a younger level and been absolutely hammered by them, to come back and win the minor championship was an amazing feat for the club at that time. And slowly but surely, like, we won the Division 4 league in the county at that time as well, and there was a number of up-and-coming players from that minor team stayed with the club, and then we eventually just got Division 4, Division 3, Division 2, and eventually won Division 1 titles over a period of maybe 15 years. So it's unusual to have the 4 league medals, and we eventually then went on to win our first senior championship in 1989. At school football, one of the huge influences on my career was a man called Mickey Linden, a very renowned coach. And Barney took me to school and brought me to another level, because he wanted to develop my weak side of my play, whereas I started to use my left foot an awful lot more, and he made me concentrate an awful lot on that. And he also would be trying to get me to express my ability and in trying new things, trying different things. Never be afraid to express yourself in the football field. Don't be afraid to take a chance with the things you want to do, whether you want to hit the ball the outside of your boot, your inside of your boot. Just don't be afraid to do these things, because you become a better player for it. And Barney was a huge influence on my career right through my school football. And other influences, of course, were the different managers that managed me over through club and county. Brendan McParland would have been a manager when we were Division 4, Mayo Bridge, and he stayed with us for a number of years, winning the junior championship. And as I said, mentioned earlier, we won the 3 or the 4 league medals, and he was with us for the first 2 of those. Another great man. And at county level, I was managed by quite a number of great managers: Val Kane, James McCartan Senior, Sean Smith. So there were huge influences on my career, and of course, Peter McGrath, John Murphy, and of course, in the 94 campaign, Pete introduced another man to us who was a renowned coach in the county called Pat O'Hare. He was nicknamed Sprick O'Hare, but he was fierce and enthusiastic, and that enthusiasm shone through in that 94 squad. Unfortunately, Pat passed away a few years later after that, but he certainly had a big influence on our career at that time. The teams that the 60s were for everybody was looking up to those guys. Obviously, our own clubman Tom was involved, yes, but players like Colin McIllarney, Brendan Sloan. I probably was a bit young to remember the early 60s, but I certainly remember the team of the 68 team that won. And of course, that got me interested in following Down at a young age as well. And I wanted to obviously develop my skills and eventually try and play for Down at some stage. But yes, the teams of the 60s were certainly very inspirational. And then one of the players who played in that era, John Murphy, who scored a goal in the 68 final, ended up being a selector with Pete McGrath in 91 and 94. And John unfortunately passed away last year. But I have to say, he was a huge inspiration and a huge help to me later on in my life. So I'll probably mention later on in the interview. But certainly, yeah, the 60s were the men to look up to and Down, and they brought so much success, having won 3 All-Irelands. I started to play for Down after I finished with the minor team in '81. We were beaten in the championship, and then later on that year, I was asked into the squad. So I joined up with the senior team in the fall of '81. I played my first National League match. As you know, the league used to start in October, November that time. And my first game was against Meath in Newcastle. It was a home game for us. We played in Newcastle, and we played Meath on the day. And I think it was October '81 was my first Down senior match. I think we actually drew the match as well that game. But it was great excitement for me. It was obviously the step I wanted to take, and the progression that I wanted to make was from minor to senior. I was only too delighted to get in at that young age, and it did take me a while to establish myself in the team, but I was coming on a sub for a couple of matches, and then I eventually cemented my place in the half-forward line to start off with, and then played later on in the corner then for most of my career. Probably couldn't have comprehended the fact that we were going to go on and win All Irelands at that at an early stage. Obviously, Down had success, and we had a very strong team at that time, and were challenging in Ulster. We'd won the Ulster title in '81, so I thought for sure we'll be challenging here for Ulster titles. Whether we would go on to win Sam Maguire was, well, a little bit of a pipe dream, because at that time Kerry and Dublin were dominating football, and it was hard to see anybody breaking that stranglehold that they had, particularly that great Kerry team at the time. But we're also very, very hopeful that we would eventually come through. There's good development within the county. Myself, Greg Linney, Ross Clark, DJ Kane were coming through. There's exciting talent, Brendan Mason. There's exciting talent coming through in the county, so we're hopeful that could break that stranglehold. And it was probably later in the '80s that we got the confidence and belief that we could, and the fact that the Down minors had been successful as well. in the late 80s gave us even more hope because there's more exciting players coming through like James McCartan Jr. and Conor Deegan, Cathal Murray, fellas like that. So that was always going to strengthen our senior team. So yeah, it took us a while, to probably gain the confidence and belief within the team, but the team had been established, quite a number of years, and it just took the missing link, which was probably wee James and Conor Deegans to give us the confidence that we could do something here. The first time was just on a school trip, and of course, as a kid, the excitement of going to Grove Park, just getting a trip out of school was good, but to get to Grove Park was very exciting, particularly when you're a up and coming player and you hope and dream of playing there someday. And yeah, that was the first real memory of Grove Park. First time I played there would have been probably um, 82 or in the National League, and or 83, maybe 83 we won the National League. So yeah, it was probably 83 quarter final and semi final. I remember playing the semi final against Kildare. It was probably the coldest day I ever played football. There was hailstones, and it was we managed to get through the game okay and we won. But memories of it being so cold and such a bitter cold day that my hands were numb, my feet were numb. It was. I don't think I've ever played football in it like it since. Our preparation was always done from home. We didn't travel to Dublin and stay overnight. We always travelled up and got a good night's sleep in our own bed. I think that was what Pete wanted us to do. It's important you get proper sleep, and obviously, if you're comfortable in your own bed and it's not that far up to Dublin for us anyway. Um, so that was how we travelled to Dublin. There's always a pre-match meal somewhere, or something like where we stopped off, usually in the Carrickdale or something like that hotel on the way up, and travelled from there. And obviously, the great excitement there was in the semi-finals and finals with all the supporters on the road in, and obviously having a Garda escort in added to the whole excitement of the preparation. And sometimes, it can be hard to keep your feet on the ground when you see all this going on around you. But particularly in '91, when it was the first time in 23 years, you can imagine the buzz that was in the county. And probably the biggest thing was probably trying to keep away from supporters, just to because everybody wants to give you a wee bit of advice that maybe you don't really need at the time. You probably need to keep your head, focused on the game at hand. And I like to just stay around home, have my own routine, get up early. And myself and Brent McKernan used to go down to one of the local schools and kick a few balls around that on the morning off the match, and then go to Newry, meet the lads. But we'd already sort of got the legs freshened up by kicking a few balls and doing a few runs just before we left for the match. And then, of course, when we got into Crow Park, well, the warm up area at that time, you sort of did it on the field. There was no warm up area at that time, so we got out in the field early and did the warm up on the pitch. Of course, when Pete very commanding in a changing room, and everybody listens and the focus is there. Before he would speak at all, there'd be probably different players talking to you about different things that are going to happen on the day. Myself and Greg Linney, who had played together for like 10, 12 years before this, would have been regularly talking about, what he's going to do when he gets a break ball, like be on the move, so he can get the ball quickly into me. Things like that, but all help focus you for what's coming up ahead of you, and sort of keeping your feet in the ground, and it's just another game. You try and keep your focus by saying it's just another game. It's not really, but that's the way you have to have in your mindset. And of course, when Pete started to talk, everybody listened. The captain then usually came in, and the focus was, just a slow build up to the door opened, and we're very, very set in our minds that we're capable of beating anybody. Our belief was always that we're at a level now where we can compete at the top, and I think especially in the first All Ireland against Meath, the the pressure was more on me than us, because they'd come through a saga with Dublin for 4 big games. They were hot favourites to win that All Ireland, but at the same time, we had great belief on the players that was in our change room. We had played Meath the previous year in the National League final, and then the National League beat us. So we knew that we weren't far away from that level. So in hindsight, when you look back at it, you'd probably think that, because of the pressure that was on Meath, it was easier for us to prepare for that game. Personally, myself, I've been fairly quiet, and I'm not one of these people who needs to thump the wall to get myself motivated. Quietly within my own mind, and I'm very, very determined, and I have great self belief in my own ability, and I think that carried me through all my career. And I think, when you've done and played football for maybe 5 or 6 years with a team, and you get very, very confident in your own ability. And I was always very confident in my own ability without expressing it within the change room. I just knew when to go out onto the field that, for somebody to mark me, they're going to have to be very, very good in the day. So I had that quiet determination and belief in my own ability. So I never really got overphased about a match, never really got too nervous about it. And I just thought it had it said to me that they'll be more nervous than me, because I believe that the work done. When you run out Croke Park on an All Ireland final day or semi final day, the hairs do stand up in the back of your neck. You can hear the roar from the crowd. You're not going to hear any individual that you know really, but you just hear that drone. But your focus has to be on the game the whole time. Obviously, the fact that I was 27 at that stage, I was more experienced. Wasn't going to let the occasion overwhelm me. Even in the parade around the field, I was able to look up and sort of maybe pick out certain people just to enjoy the experience of being there, because you never know if you're ever going to get back again. So it's important to enjoy those big occasions and don't let them overwhelm you. But at the same time, you're totally focused on your own game. At the end of the day, the work's done. So how we perform in the day, is what it's all about. 91 All Ireland final, as I said earlier, the pressure was on me. We started the game reasonably well, and as the game progressed, we settled into the game very well. And I can't remember what the score was at half time, but we were well in the game. I think there were only a couple of points in it. But when we came out in the second half, we had a spell where we played unbelievable football, probably the best football we played up to then. In about a 20-minute spell, we went 11 points ahead. And, well, at that time, you'd have thought the game was over. But when Smeath you're playing, you're never just quite sure, and they'd come back so many times. And, of course, they did have that comeback at us. And I think Liam Hayes got a goal. Bernard Flynn had a good chance with a great save from Neil. So the game was on a knife edge at the finish. I had a great chance myself near the end, and blasted it wide, and it was a real sense of relief when we did win because I'd missed that chance. But at the end of the day, we finished up winning with 2 points, and it was a tremendous occasion for the county. When the final whistle went, obviously, it was one of real relief and excitement and joy. But to see the colour in Croke Park that day, and the red and black on the hill, was just unbelievable. There's been great. I've seen some great photographs of it online and stuff like that. But the colour that Down bring to any occasion to Croke Park is special. I don't know. It's just the fact that we're red and black. It just seems to stand out. But you can imagine the colour and the scenes after the final whistle, and at that time, of course, the crowd came onto the field, and you're nearly carried over to where the presentation was, and of course, you get more pats in the back, and probably get hurt more going to the podium than it did in the whole match. But they were fantastic scenes, and they will live long in the memory. coming back home the following day, you can imagine the excitement was unbelievable. Every place we travelled through, at that time I think we went into Drogheda, we did, yeah, and there was a huge crowd there. Travelled on down across the border, and of course there was great excitement. The captain of the team, Paddy Rourke, got out and carried Sam Maguire over the border. That was a special moment. And then coming down into Newry, the scenes were just unbelievable. I think there was about 30,000 people there, and we were on a double decker, an open top bus, and of course the amount of people that were swarming around it, I felt dangerous. It felt dangerous because there were so many people coming around the bus at that time. Where thankfully the bus went very slow, but you could imagine what it was like for having taken Sam Maguire across the border, first time in 23 years, and what it meant to the fans at the time. So great excitement and great memories, and we had a fairly exciting following week, I would say, after that, before things settled down. In '94, the team was well established at that time. We had great belief in ourselves. There was a lot of hurt in the team at the start of the year because we had received a bad beating by Derry the previous year, and were knocked out in '92 as well. So there was a feeling within the camp that this is now or never. This team, if we don't do it this year, we'll probably lose a lot of players, and things will have to change within the county. But thankfully, we were drawn against Derry in the first game in Celtic Park, and they were reigning All-Ireland champions. It was one of those terrific days that live along in the memory, where it was probably one of the best game of football ever to be played, and it was great joy to be part of that. Following that, then we played Monaghan in the Ulster semi-final. Now, if you remember back, the Lough Island killings had just happened the night before, so that was a very, very strange atmosphere to be playing football in. And of course, Gary Mason from Lough Island was part of the team, and Gary thankfully decided to make the call to play that day. And I think it meant a lot to the people of Lough Island that he did, But it was a sad occasion, but a very strange occasion to be playing after what had happened that previous night. And then in the Ulster final, then we played Tyrone, and Tyrone at the time were a team that was beginning to come, and it was a tough match now, but it was a very exciting Ulster final as well, and we managed to get past that by 5 or 6 points. The semi-final, we played Cork, and Cork were another team at the top at the time. They had a few players left over from their winning double All-Ireland winning teams at the late 80s, and it was a great game with them in the semi-final. And then in the final, of course, we played the Dubs, and of course it was to beat Dublin in the All-Ireland final, and to have beaten Meath as well in the All-Ireland final at that time. So I think it just cemented that not only were we a good team, we were a great team. And I think that was what the team was out to prove, that, to win one All-Ireland is special, but to win two is sort of proving that you're a great team, not just a good team. And I think we managed to do that over those 4 or 5 years. The Down team in '91, I think, for sure, set a marker for the rest of the teams in Ulster. And I think when they saw that we could do it, and especially Donegal, Derry, who we had beaten in that campaign, they knew they weren't far away. It took us extra match. We drew with Derry in the semi-final in '91, and so they probably were saying to themselves, we were very close to the top. If Down can go here and win, we can go here and win. So, and Derry had a fantastic team at that time. It's hard to believe that they only won one All-Ireland. I think they won 3 national leagues, and of course Donegal went on to win in '92, which was phenomenal for their county as well, which was great to see. But certainly, we lit the fire, and thankfully, the Ulster team just came to the top at that particular period of time. And lucky enough, there was an Ulster man at the head of the GAA, Peter Quinn, and I'm sure he was delighted at the time as well. Pete was manager at the time, and he asked me to come along as a coach. I was classified as the runner, if you remember. But lucky enough, it wasn't just about me running onto the field with the water bottle. I was totally involved as a coach at the time, and there was nothing better than to be coaching the best players in Ireland. And in the first series, which was played in Croke Park, um, we won and beat Australia quite convincingly, and won the Cormac McAllen Cup. And then the following year we travelled to Australia. At the time, I was very, very glad to be involved because it allowed me to coach the best players in Ireland at the time, and I've some great memories of the likes of Kieran McDonald, Pork Joyce, Steve McDonald, all the top players of that era. To be able to, Sean Kavanagh was there, Brian Doer, fantastic lads, and great to get to know them. And it's something I'll cherish for the rest of my life. After I finished my senior career, and my senior career lasted quite a while. um, I didn't win my first championship, Down championship. I was 36. I've been beaten in so many semi-finals over the years, so to win the first one was very special. But then I managed to go on and win 7 more. So it was just one of those fantastic eras in the club where 4 or 5 fellas who had been down minors and won the All Ireland, Benny Coulter, Mickey Walsh, Ronnie Sexton, Ron Maher, Brenton Grant, had all come through from the All Ireland minor one winning team. And in '99, they had just come into our senior team, so it gave us the boost we needed. And went on to have a glorious area of winning 8 in about 10 years, 8 championships. So it was phenomenal for the club at that time. And then after that, I stepped back a little bit and what do you call it? Played a little bit of seconds football, and then I played for the thirds, and just I don't know, I just enjoyed playing the game, and I didn't have any serious injuries, so I played on to 56 there. So I always say the code finished me. so and in that time we won the Premier Reserve League a few times as well, so our championship a few times. So I enjoyed playing. As I say, I had no injuries, I kept myself fit, so I didn't feel any ill effects on the body. So at that time, that's why I kept playing for such a long period of time. I was introduced to athletics through man from Tyrone, Patsy Forbes. I was at an Ulster GAA Writers' Do, and we were sitting at the same table, and we were talking football first of all, and then he was telling me about he was competing in the Masters Athletics, and he said I should go give it a go because he obviously knew as a sprinter or was fairly quick on the football field. So I just got interested after talking to him. So I started to compete with athletics, and I went to a couple of the national championships, and then I found that I wasn't far away. I think I got a second on the first outing, and then I got a first in the 100 meters. So I thought, right, I'll maybe do a bit of training, see how good I can get at this. Um, One of the local physios, Mickey Walsh here, gave me a program to work on in just over a period of time. So just to develop my especially my quad muscles and things like that to see if I could develop a wee bit more speed. And I went through that, and then I went to compete in the indoors, and I found that I was quicker at the 60-meter indoors, and my times were quicker over 60 meters than 100 meters. So I went when I was 50, and I won the national championships down in Nina at the time, and set a new Irish record for a 50-year-old at 60 metres. So I thought, well, as well, try and go on to the World Championships here and see how they get on. So I went to Budapest and competed in that, and I was delighted. I ended up getting to a semi-final, and I think I finished about 14th in the world, so I was more than pleased. So that's how I got started into athletics. But Patsy is a fierce, enthusiastic man, and he helped my career as well. I ran for Mid Ulster at the time, so I really enjoyed that part of my athletics. But since that, I haven't really completed since. It's very, very severe on the body, as you know, when you're pushing your body to that level. So I was beginning to get a wee bit of hip pain and back pain, so I just stepped back from it this last few years. Most memorable match I played in, yes, I've mentioned it earlier, was the Derry Down game in Celtic Park. Basically, probably because it meant so much to us, you know, the hurt that had been in the team, and the focus within the team and the build up to that match was huge. And then the game ended up a classic. It just had everything between tackling, commitment, from both sides was tremendous, and I firmly believe that if Derry had beaten us that day, they would have gone on and won the All Ireland. It was like an All Ireland final on the day, but certainly that was probably my most memorable match, and the fact that I just finished up with 6 points on the day, just was pleasing, you know. So, but there's so much commitment and so much good football in that game. What I would say to young fellas coming through that are have their eye on playing for the counties and playing in Croke Park is practice the skills. Practice the skills, practice. At the end of the day, the thing that sets most players apart is their ability and their skill ability. You know, I believe that everybody can get fit and can train in a gym and get fast and can run for 70 minutes. But what sets the player apart for me is the ability and the skill ability to be able to kick with both feet and to have the vision to see the 20, 30-yard pass and pop it into the player who's on the run. You know, having the ability to do that sets you apart. So what I'd say to young ones is, you know, it's so important, whether it's just fisting the ball up against the ball with both hands or kicking the ball against the wall with both feet. It's so important, and it really will help you develop into a top-rate player later on in your career. Highlights in the club career for sure would be that minor championship back in 1980. Okay, and obviously winning the 4 league medals means a lot to me as well. And of course, our first championship win, which was in 1999 against our arch rivals, Burn, which made it probably a bit sweeter as well. And at county, obviously, you know, you dream of playing an All Ireland final in Croke Park, and you know, the first one for me nothing will ever beat it. You know, because it's something you're trying to achieve for so many years, and you played at the top level. I know what I played myself and Greg Blaney and Ross and those guys had played maybe for 10 years before we won anything. And certainly, you know, the 91 All Ireland would be very, very special. 94 would be special for maybe something different, just because I was so consistent that year in every match. I nearly had a top game. So that's been special, and that's been important to me throughout my career. It's not, I think if you want to be a good player, you have to be consistently good in every match. So that was always a focus for me. And the fact then that I won Player of the Year in '94 was cemented that, you know, belief in myself. Yes, a huge honour to win Player of the Year. Obviously, my family, Louisa and the boys put in a lot of sacrifice as well to give me the time to train at that level. But certainly it was a huge honour for myself and represent Mayo Bridge and pick up that award. You know, was a tremendous achievement for me.